Hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back aboard the Great Ship, the Space Show. I'm your host, Lieutenant Commander Rebecca Frost, joined, as always, by Admiral Kerry Jackson, Commander Robert Neal, and Commodore Macha Hernandez. Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Hi.
Hello.
My books are in a state of disarray because of the awesomeness of the 5th episode we're going to talk about.
Just don't look at them. You guys, we have got one heck of an episode for you today, because this string of episodes, The Hunted, The High Ground, Deja Q, A Matter of Perspective, and Yesterday's Enterprise, 4 out of the 5 of these episodes are fist pump, loved every single second of them. So why don't we...
Good.
That's a spicy Star Trek, right? Like, why don't we just get started and talk about The Hunted? Investigating a planet applying for membership into the Federation, the crew of the Enterprise finds a group of inhabitants who used to be soldiers but now fight for their very existence. And I gotta say, there are a lot of hotties. We got a lot of hotties. We got a lot of rogue, baddie hotties in this string of episodes.
First Blood, the Next Generation.
First Blood, the Next Generation. The Enterprise arrives at Angosia 3, which wants to join the Federation. PM Nayrock stresses pacifism and intellectualism, but a prisoner has escaped from the maximal security facility on Luna 5, and the Enterprise undertakes the challenge to capture this stolen cargo vessel, but it eludes the starship at an asteroid after more tricks, such as the vessel hidden within the polar magnetic field of the planet. The prisoner who's escaped Roga then puts himself in a life pod and tries to escape, but he's detected by Data, and the prisoner is beamed aboard and stunned with great difficulty. And they sure had trouble taking this guy down.
See, I was going to bring that up. This kind of shows you the deficiencies that the Enterprise has. They're not trained to handle this kind of an assault, you know?
No, and this episode featured a ton of stage combat, just like stuff that we haven't seen since original series days, honestly. There's so much like full body fighting. So this prisoner, Roga, has no life signs. None of the ship's sensors can register him, and his record is military. He has a distinguished war record and was a decorated soldier. Deanna says that there is a duality about him. Inherently, he has a nonviolent personality. She tries to speak to him to figure out why he was imprisoned in the first place. Angosia has shared all of their databases with the Enterprise in support of their application to join the Federation. Data and Deanna searched the database for records on him, and it is found that he was in a program to turn unknowing Angosian volunteer army recruits into perfect soldiers by chemical and mind programming. He is very normal, but when a danger is perceived, the programming takes over. One of the substances in his body shields electrical impulses and hence doesn't even register life scans. So we've got a bit of a Captain America situation going on here.
That's more Iron Giant, isn't it?
Or
He's
also,
fine up until you point a gun at him, then it's like game on.
Or also, dare I say, a little MK Ultra? Anybody?
Could be, yeah.
Could be.
I like all of these analogies.
When the wars ended, the soldiers had issues assimilating back into society and hence were sent to prison. Ooh, see if you can take a drink anytime you can pinpoint the Vietnam War allegory. No one tried to adjust their programming. Nayrock asks Picard not to interfere in matters of internal security, to which Picard drops this bomb line: matter of internal security, the age-old cry of the oppressor. I had to pause the episode.
Not today, colonizer.
to sit and think about what this man just said. This is woof. Like, just woof, honestly.
Keep your politics out of my Star Trek. It's never been political.
Never once.
Never once.
Roga says that he means it when he says he would rather die than return to Luna 5 as a prisoner. He proves a master of escape, and he uses the transporter beam energy to break the force field containment of his cell and is now free on the Enterprise, armed with a phaser. He manages to sidestep all traps set by Picard and Worf and is on his way towards engineering. He takes control of engineering and bypasses all security protocols to restore power to the shuttles. Data senses that he is misdirecting them by making them believe he is headed for the shuttles, and sure Sure enough, he shows up in the cargo bay transporter room. Picard tries to put him to sleep by pumping the room with sleeping gas, but Roga outsmarts them and makes them believe he used a pressure suit to access the shuttle bay from outside. This man is a master manipulator. He's a master manipulator and a master monologuist. His conversations with Deanna, I hate to say it, this man's exactly my type, and I have a big ol' crush on him. Worf catches Roga in the cargo bay. Roga beats him and beams himself onto the transport vessel from Angosia. He used a phaser to power the transporter. Before leaving, he also disables all external sensors.
Yeah, that was a brilliant move that even our engineering department didn't realize.
Nope.
Nayrock informs Picard that Roga has attacked the penal colony at Luna 5 and triggered a riot. He is now headed up to the capital with a few of his comrades. Picard leads an away team to defend the capital. Picard arrives with Worf, Data, and Troy. Picard tries to reason with Nayrock to provide treatment to the soldiers, but he is adamant that the settlement solution was part of a referendum. When Roga arrives with his troops, Picard orders not to engage them in a fight, while Roga says he will not be ignored anymore. He says he and his comrades want their lives back. Nayrock wants Picard to use the Enterprise to force the soldiers back, but Picard refuses to intervene, saying that this is an internal security matter, as Nayrock once said. And Angosia application for membership into the Federation is rejected.
Yoink.
Truly, just a blatant Vietnam War veteran allegory story, and I love when Star Trek does a Vietnam War story.
Yep. I was just calling this one Captain Picard and the Winter Soldier.
This is one of 6 appearances by Farmer Hogg in Star Trek.
Yes, James Cromwell.
I was going to say, did you notice that he looked a lot like Zephyr Cochrane?
He looks a lot like Zephyr Cochrane.
Yeah,
He also surprisingly looks a lot like Hanok from Deep Space Nine.
Oh,
He does.
and to me, he's just hot. He is such a troubled. He's so troubled. And I think that's what I like about him is he's wrongly maligned and he's troubled and he's hot. You know, he gives me big. Lee will appreciate this. He gives me big Jughead energy from Riverdale, where he's weird. He's a weirdo. He doesn't want to fit in.
That hat.
yeah.
Another thing I noticed in this episode, something that they could not have ever possibly predicted in the year 2024 of HD remasters. The stickers on the doors are so poorly applied that I'm sure, in 1990 on your old RCA TV, it looked normal, but
we didn't have, a big TV back then was 24 inches, 29 if you were lucky. And I've been noticing, this whole run through of Next Gen is you're actually seeing why we'll never see anything better than DVD quality Deep Space Nine. They said it would cost tens of millions to remaster the S9 because everything was shot on video.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I would love a high def, You know me, I love my spaceship porn.
There's fans doing it. There are a few fans doing it.
The camera going around the space station and the Defiant flying up. I want that in HD, man. Yeah.
And it ultimately doesn't look bad. I'm just being nitpicky that I saw a sticker on a door that looks like it was very poorly applied. Some trivia for this episode. This episode is the only one to feature a Jeffries tube, which is large enough to walk upright in. Before they were simply known as access chutes, access tunnels, or service chutes.
Mm-hmm.
This is obviously an allegory of U.S. veterans of the Vietnam War integrating back into American society. I only learned this recently, but to a Vietnam vet, you're not supposed to say thank you for your service. You're supposed to say welcome home.
Yeah, my dad will flip out on you if you
really?
for a service. Oh yeah, he will lose his absolute mind, and
yeah,
you will get a 30-minute litany about how his brother's still passing shrapnel from landmines, how he watched 3 whole platoons die because he got airlifted out because he had the radio, and the radio was more valuable than the other people in the squad. Yeah, he'll lose his mind. You don't thank him for his service.
Yeah, you don't thank them for their service. You say welcome home because they had a hard time feeling like they were welcome back in the United States after their tours.
Yeah.
The shirts worn by members of the Angosian Senate were the turtlenecked men's shirts from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Nice.
And James Cromwell, who plays Prime Minister Nayrock in the episode, would ultimately go on to play Zephram Cochrane, the inventor of the warp drive, in the first Contact Star Trek movie. And again,
Which Rebecca hasn't seen yet.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, everybody.
Well, it's an awesome part, and he reprises it in a Mirror Universe episode as well.
Moving on to another episode with another hottie, The High Ground. While visiting a planet under civil war, Dr. Crusher is taken hostage by an opposing faction of the planet's ruling government. This is the one that you guys were referencing last week with the stripe and how you know they're baddies because they have a stripe.
They have the stripe gray.
And this episode opens and Picard sounds intense, like right out the gate.
They're beamed down to Planet Mall, right? Because it looks like a late '80s mall.
It does look like a late
Yeah.
80s mall.
Yeah, it looks like they just left Spencer's and they're at the food court and terrorists strike.
It does give big
Yes.
food court vibes. But they're visiting
the food court.
they're visiting the food court planet to deliver medical supplies because the food court is under civil war for 70 years between two continents. While they are there is an explosion that happens, and Dr. Crusher immediately takes action. Love to see it, and she's not just restricted to sickbay for once. Immediately takes action and is unfortunately taken hostage while attending to some wounded. Let's see. Dr. Crusher was attending to the victims to one such bomb attack and refused to be beamed back to the Enterprise despite the threat being highlighted by Data and Worf, who were there with her, and Picard from the ship. The kidnapper appeared and disappeared out of nowhere without leaving any traces behind. The Enterprise is puzzled as to the kind of transportation mechanism used. Beverly's communicator is also inactive. The Ansatans are demanding autonomy and the right to self-determination for the Western continent. This episode also kind of hard to watch, knowing everything that's happening in the world right now.
Yeah.
Crazy how things just never ever change, huh?
Keep your politics out of Star Trek. It's never been political. This one was, as I recall, and I checked me on this. It was an allegory for the Troubles in Ireland.
I believe so. Especially because later on they reference the Irish unification of 2024. Cannot wait.
They're close. They're very
We're
close.
so close. En Rutia, the chief of security, Alexana Davos, is perplexed by this new technology used by the Ansata and renders them undiscoverable by any scanner. Also, if I'm saying words wrong, it just kind of is what it is. She provides the devices being used by the Ansata, taken off of dead terrorists, to Picard and Riker. She maintains a database of the 200 members of the Ansata and 5,000 of their sympathizers. She is not very hopeful to find Beverly since they are not known to take hostages, so Picard leaves Riker with her to assist in their efforts. She tells Riker that 70 years ago the Ansatans were denied independence, and since then they have resisted the Eastern government, with violence creeping into their resistance over time. They blew up a bus with 60 school children and claimed that it was a mistake as they wanted to target a police shuttle. Wesley is assigned to Worf's technology team to identify the technology being used for transportation. Wesley spots radiation traces indicating the use of life-threatening dimension shift techniques abandoned by the Federation research because of the health toll. Dimension shifting?
I guarantee you there's one part of Starfleet still using it.
Probably.
Section 30, whatever, 31.
Could be.
31.
And once again, it's Wesley CSI there. You know, he's helping to...
But I mean, to be honest, I mean, look at it this way. Wesley, well, he was talking to Geordi and Data in the engineering bay. He's like, "Oh, wait a minute, this sounds like this thing I heard in a lecture." And I'm like, Wesley takes classes. They actually address the fact that he takes classes and he learned something.
Academy! Yay!
Yay!
Correspondence
Three cheers for
courses.
Starfleet Academy.
Mm-hmm.
But now we understand why they took Dr. Crusher in the first place, right? Because they needed a doctor. They needed a good doctor, especially with this dimension shifting technology that takes a health toll. They need her to help them. The man keeping her, Chiral Finn.
Another one of your types.
Awooga.
Apparently.
You just love a feathered pseudo mullet.
Yeah, I love a rogue baddie who's doing things for good.
Yeah.
He shows the great need for medical aid their side is not getting from the Federation, and he makes some really good points. He makes some really good points about how the Federation is delivering medical supplies to their opposition, but not to them. And where is the justice in that? Again, a lot of parallels to things happening in real life right now that make me physically ill. Beverly takes a look at the sick Ansatans and finds warped DNA, which is distorting their entire cellular chemistry. Finn tells Beverly about the dimensional shift generator, called the inverter, that allows them to travel undetected. Alas, the inverter causes DNA warping Beverly can't treat.
This device you're using to continue your cause and help win your war is also killing you.
Yeah.
But we cannot stop using it because it is the only thing holding their whole cause together. Yeah. Riker conveys to Finn via his sympathizers that he's willing to negotiate for the return of Beverly. Meanwhile, Data sets up a scanner on the Enterprise to track dimensional shifts taken by the Ansatans and to track their power source. Finn tells Beverly that he intends to destroy the Enterprise to force Federation to intervene. They use the inverter to get onto the Enterprise, and it actually gets very scary. They beam right aboard the bridge and start to actually take the Enterprise, but luckily, it's all good. They install an explosive on the warp engines. Geordi manages to remove the explosive and beam it off the Enterprise just before it explodes. Finn infiltrates the bridge and kidnaps Picard, and Picard and Beverly unite. Picard tells Beverly about their attack on the Enterprise and that Wesley's safe. Don't worry.
It's like the first thing out of his mouth. Wesley's okay.
It's okay. Picard blames Beverly for not following his orders, and she's like, this is me, and this is the type of shit that I'm gonna do.
And I'm a doctor, and I took an oath. Yeah.
Finn reveals to Picard that by kidnapping him, he intends to force the Federation to negotiate and press the government into concessions. Finn appears on the Enterprise and happens to meet Deanna. He conveys his demands to get the planet Rudia blockaded by the Federation till government consents to talks mediated by the Federation Council. Wesley is able to track the location of their power source. Riker attacks with the help from Alexana. Finn wants to shoot Picard, but Alexana intercepts him and shoots him dead first. There's a few things in this episode. One, especially earlier when they're talking about how the children of this rebellious group are also known to attack, and therefore no one is safe, and they are seen arresting kids. Yeah. Pretty scary. And then there is a moment where Finn is talking about the American Revolution itself, right? And he says, "I'm no different than your own George Washington." And that line, to me, real MAGA behavior. That's the line to me that took it from, yeah, I'm on your side, to, oh no, you're a little bit extreme, and I don't know that I like it.
It's also,
but he did make a point.
Hard.
He did make a good point when he said that there's a thin line between general, the winner, depending on who wins the battle, you're either a general or a terrorist. It's just like, he's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We also weren't really teaching the reality of Washington in 1990, 1989. He was very much our red, white, and blue
revered
superhero. Yeah, revered.
Oh,
and we hadn't gone down the revisionist route. This episode, and quite a few of the episodes this season and next, you're going to see a lot of influences from real world events that were happening in 89, 90, the fall of the Berlin Wall, first open election in Brazil in 30 years. The literal, I was just scanning this real quick. The first document to actually create the World Wide Web was submitted in 1989. Like there was literal revolution and upheaval going on everywhere, and you're seeing it in episodes like this where they're like, yeah, let's talk about revolution, let's talk about upheaval, it's wild stuff. And you see a lot of this in DS9, Rebecca. You will see a ton of this in DS9.
Trust me, I'm excited to get to DS9.
Yeah.
There's a moment where Beverly is talking to Finn and she says that he, Picard, would never forcibly abduct you. Mind you, Picard a few episodes ago abducted a Mintakan to bring her aboard their ship to prove to her that God isn't real. So I don't know. I don't
Did
know.
he abduct her though?
Yeah. That's to smack somebody about religion, and I'm totally about that.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Fair,
Say
fair.
you're God's fake. That's totally worth
I'll
it.
kidnap anyone just to prove to
Yeah.
them that God isn't real.
Yeah, nah.
This is also, I think they're dropping a little hints of Picard and Beverly, like in their romantic entanglements, because there's a moment where they think there's a moment where they are like, we could die here, and Beverly starts to say to him, listen, there's something I want to say to you, if we don't make it out of here alive, and then they get interrupted and rescued, and I'm on the edge of my seat at home like, what were you going to say, Beverly?
You were waiting for this muscular dude with no shirt and a saxophone and a white stripe in his hair to bust out and start playing some slow jazz.
Just the tiniest bit of sexual tension that I'm sure I'll get more of, hopefully. Some trivia for this episode: when the Ansata leader beams onto the Enterprise bridge, he loses his weapon. That weapon is a disruptor, which is outlawed by all worlds in the Federation.
Yeah.
Can you guys tell me what a disruptor does?
It's a Klingon weapon, and do Romulans use disruptors as well?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So a phaser is a beam weapon that will, on its lowest settings, stun, and on its highest settings, disintegrate. A disruptor literally disrupts your molecular cells.
Extremely painful.
Extremely painful and potentially even lingeringly lethal. Like a shot from a disruptor, even on a low setting, it's gonna eat your lunch. On a high setting, it's not a pretty way to die. Like it disrupts your molecules.
Yeah, the phaser on kill, on disintegrate.
Yeah.
Conceivably, you won't feel a thing. You'll just cease to
And
exist.
it's a good way to get rid of an earworm.
And that.
But we saw the disintegrate setting with Utah when Riker was like, stop it, okay, done.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
I'd tap that in a second, but
but the Federation comes first.
And with this one, the rebels, they've got a point. It's like, we want representation, and it's just like, can we talk? And I like that they're just like, they shut down, like, nope, you're terrorists, we're not going to do anything. You're just not having it. Yeah. And for light television, even though it's Star Trek is known for bringing up topics, this was really heavy for prime time syndicated TV in 89, 90.
Yeah.
This was an intense episode. Like, it starts intense and it kind of stays intense the entire time. Due to a line from Data in reference to the Provisional Irish Republican Army and the reunification of Ireland in 2024, the episode was originally banned in the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland, not airing in the usual running order on the BBC. In 2006, it was shown on Sky One, which had assumed the broadcast rights, with the relevant line edited out. It was eventually shown unedited on BBC Two on September 29th, 2007, in the after midnight repeat slot. It has also never been shown on the RTE, which I assume is the Republic of Ireland's broadcast channel. Listen. I'm falling down this Kate Middleton rabbit hole, obviously. I think
nothing more fascinating than a parasite.
I think the reunification of Ireland, I think it's probably imminent, you guys. The fall of the monarchy is happening right before our very eyes, and what a doozy of a timeline to live in,
So now's your chance to not take sides in Irish nationalism. Don't wear green or orange for St. Patrick's Day, because all you're really doing is backing one side over another when you wear green, you silly billies.
Do you want
It's
to
green or orange. It's the Catholics and the Protestants. They have their colors and they go to war over it. And we go, oh yeah, we'll wear green because we're Americans. We don't understand history.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
Something else that I learned today, not really Star Trek related. Athletes from Northern Ireland going to the Olympics are allowed to compete as Great Britain or Ireland.
Well, that makes sense. Yes.
Right.
I did not know that either.
Don't ask if they're Scottish. Just don't.
Just rooting for my Irish ancestors.
So here's a question: if the Irish unification is coming up and they didn't air this in Ireland and the UK, are they not going to air anything about the Bell riots in San Francisco later this year?
Wait a sec. So if Irish unification is 2024, the Bell riots are 2024 as well. That's a big year.
That means World War III is right on the horizon, you guys.
Ooh. Yeah.
Just saying.
All right.
There's something about the Bell riots.
If we want to escape all of that, we might as well just join the Continuum, which I would in a heartbeat, which brings us to the next episode, Deja Q. Much to Picard's displeasure, Q reappears on the Enterprise, claiming to have been ejected from the Q Continuum and therefore lost his powers. I'm going to do this in the spirit of Star Trek and not Republicans. Q, 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 Q.
I am upset, though. that John Delancey, they didn't have enough time to get him fitted for his first scene for wardrobe.
Yeah.
The Enterprise is assisting a planet which is threatened by its moon, which is on course to fall onto the western continent, which will send them into their ice age. Which I know this kind of happens in Strange New Worlds, and we see how they interfere that way. My initial question before we dive into this, should the Enterprise and the Federation help with this asteroid that is hurtling to, or with their moon that is falling towards their planet?
It's an internal problem.
They say they can't interfere with the natural progression of a race, but they step in all the time if there's a way to do it without being seen.
Well, I got the feeling that this planet was either going to join the Federation or was in the Federation.
That was my understanding too. I was kind of under the assumption that they were part of the Federation. They seemed to be part of the Federation.
Because there was a lot of back and forth between them and, help us,
But it immediately raised the question to me of, do you intervene? Because this is obviously the natural progression of something.
That's why I couldn't be in Starfleet. I'm like Dr. Pulaski, where I'm like, yes, absolutely, I'm interfering.
Well, see, you're in the first 10 minutes of Star Trek Into Darkness place here now.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
So while they're in the middle of, trying to figure out how to fix this problem, a wild John Delancey appears, floating in midair, a very reminiscent of that Matt Fraction Hawkeye panel where I don't know if you've seen it. It's naked Hawkeye. He's getting shot at, and then he's leaping across, and there's his little logo acting as a censorship bar. Just really reminded me of that. And you guys, I cannot stress enough how much I love Q.
Amazing.
I'm very excited.
The best.
I am so excited because as we go through the different iterations of Star Trek, you will see how his relationship with different captains exists. Because there is a theory about Q and Jean-Luc that gets cemented very solidly by his interactions with other captains.
And also, my favorite episode of Next Generation is coming up.
Flowers for Jean-Luc Picard.
With Q. And Q is...
This isn't even the best one?
It isn't even. No. The best one is coming.
No. The best one made me cry.
Oh, no. Okay.
Is that Tapestry? Tapestry?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely my favorite.
Falling like a baby.
Yes, my favorite.
Like a baby, because there's one scene with a blue uniform and an old guy wearing it, and I went, "Oh,
yes,
carpe diem."
Yes.
Damn it.
All right.
Okay,
anyway,
so a naked Q suddenly appears on the bridge. He's floating midair. He drops. He looks up at Captain Picard. Goes, "Red alert!" And I go, so much. Q is being punished by the Continuum for being a little bit too chaotic.
You're too spicy.
And so they kick him out, and they give him the choice. You can be whatever you want to be as long as it's mortal. And they've given him like a split second to choose, and he picks human, and he wants to go on the Enterprise.
Yeah,
because John Luke is the closest thing he has to a friend.
And that's the truth.
It is.
This is the birth of that Captain Picard meme where he's got his head in his hands, just so exasperated by this man.
You imagine, like, you're just trying to explore the universe, boldly go, all that stuff, and some god just shows up once or twice a year and is like, hello.
You're my best friend.
I was in the neighborhood. I want God and Picard Day. I want to hang out.
Hey, buddy, loan me $1,000, would you?
Hey, little brother.
Can I stay on your hat? Can I stay on your futon?
Exactly.
Q formally requests sanctuary on the Enterprise. All of their instruments indicate that Q is in fact human and not, as they originally feared, responsible for the moon that is falling out of its orbit. Picard puts Q in the brig.
Thing to do.
And Q says that this is a cruel punishment since the entire universe has been his backyard and Q is not used to confined spaces.
It's little puppy dog Q. Aww.
Oh. Geordi is working on reinforcing the tractor beam for the moon. Q makes a brilliant engineering suggestion. He suggests that the Enterprise puts a force field around the moon to change its gravitational constant to make it lighter to push around. Picard decides to trust Q and lets him out of the brig. Q begins to feel everything that a human does: hunger, pain, and emotions. Guinan is especially pleased and takes pleasure in Q's suffering. Q used to endure the suffering of his victims through the centuries, and she asks Q to get used to begging, as this is the only way he will survive in this new avatar. This whole section of the episode where he is working with Data and Geordi, and suddenly his back hurts, right? And he's just like, I cannot believe this is how you humans live all the time, with a little tummy ache all of the time. Your head hurts just all of the time, and just absolutely love it. And then when they go to
it's exhausting.
When Data takes him the 10 forward because his stomach is making noises and he's hungry.
Hungry, Q hungry.
Q talks about the foul mood that he's in, and Data is like, well, if I were to correlate ideas from other sources, whenever Chancellor Troy is in a foul mood, she eats something chocolate. So might I suggest like a chocolate sundae? And Q is like, I will take 10 chocolate sundaes.
I call that Tuesday. Well, but before the incident, I called that Tuesday.
I was gonna say,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Also, I can't believe I skipped over this. There's a moment earlier on the bridge where Q is like, what must I do to convince you people? And Worf says, die. Like, Worf, oh my god.
But I like the look that he gets, because Riker's just kind of like, I couldn't say it, but good on you.
Well, and you would say that Worf said the quiet part out loud, but he's a Klingon.
That's true.
There is no quiet
This is how
part.
I feel on the inside all the time.
Yeah.
I also love when his back hurts and he's talking to the guys about it. He's like, what is it that you say? And they go, ow. And his response, ow. So dramatic drama queen. And then he gets his 10 chocolate sundaes, and then he's suddenly like, I'm not hungry anymore. He's just like me, for real. The ship is also being probed with Berthold radiation by an outside force that seems to have a complaint against Q. They engulf the Enterprise with an energy field, which starts to attack Q. Only by matching the shield harmonics does Geordi keep them from penetrating the Enterprise and saves Q. The Calamarain whatever is attacking Q. They exist as swirls of ionized gas. Q tormented them, and now they want their revenge. Q wants protection from his human friends. And Picard is not sure, since Q has made many enemies, and protecting him would be a full-time mission.
Yeah, that's true.
Based on inputs from Data and Geordi, Picard allows Q to help Geordi carry out the maneuver with the moon to shift it away from the planet. But to carry out the maneuver, shields have to be lowered, and Geordi is able to make things work with the moon. But that's when the Calamarains start to attack and the shields go back up. The Enterprise loses guidance and end up in the upper atmosphere of the planet, and it starts to burn up. The energy entity again enters the ship and engulfs Q. Only Data saves Q from being carried away, and Data's own positronic neural net is knocked out in the process. Q realizes that his conduct aboard the ship has been extremely selfish and self-serving. We love a self-aware king. Q realizes there's only one solution for him. He takes a shuttle and goes to surrender to the Calamarain. Picard tries to save him, but all of his instruments are frozen. And since this is a selfless act, the Q is visited by Corbin Burnson, another Q, who is impressed with how the humans are still trying to save Q after all he has done, and how Q decided to sacrifice himself to save the Enterprise. Q's powers are then restored, and he makes the Calamarain vanish. I love the appearance of this second Q because it confirms to me that they're all like this, and I would join the Continuum in a heartbeat if offered. I didn't realize until I was putting together the notes for this episode that was Corbin Bernstein, and so I told my friend, I was like, "Did you know Sykes' dad is in this episode?"
Well, before this, I mean, at that time. At that time, he would have been on L.A. Law, and he was the hot property on that show at the time.
Yeah.
Oh,
he was all on every magazine cover at the time.
Peter David, one of our favorite writers ever, he wrote a number of Q books back in the 90s, Q Squared, Q and Law, where Q marries Luxana Troy. It's amazing. But he posited... He posited that Trelane from the original series was a member of the Continuum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So never actually confirmed, but it fits.
Well, if Peter David said it, I believe it, and that's it.
It's gospel.
Yes.
Q, now that he's got his powers back, brings a mariachi band aboard the Enterprise, expresses his everlasting gratitude to Picard. The moon is fixed. And then this episode, the way it ended made me cry because Q goes to Data, and he's like, I want to give you a gift. And Data's like, if your intention is to make me human, I don't want that. And he's like, no, it's fine. Just consider it like a going away gift. And gives Data the gift of laughter when that's all Data has wanted this entire time that we've known him. And he just busts out into this uproarious laughter, and I'm at my computer just sobbing because it's all Data has ever wanted.
Yeah.
God, yeah. Let's talk about the trivia, because the trivia is also just as fun as the rest of the episode. After several unsuccessful attempts by director Les Landau to film Q's nude scene without forcing the actor to actually be naked, a frustrated John Delancey finally asked anyone offended by nudity to leave, stripped down, and filmed the scene in one take. This is also the birth of the Picard facepalm scene, which is now a famous internet meme.
Iconic.
This is also John Delancey's favorite appearance as Q. He reportedly said that he had legitimate fun on set. It was also his last appearance before the release of Taking Care of Business, where he appeared with Next Generation co-star Gates McFadden.
Oh.
And also in the final scene when Q appears on the bridge with a mariachi band, this required numerous takes to get the final result. John Delancey's acting was so over the top, it caused many of the cast and crew to burst out laughing. So finally, the director Les Landau used wide camera angles with the actors' backs turned to the cameras for the first half of the scene. In fact, during the take that made it on air, Michael Dorn can clearly be seen putting his head down to hide his face because he cannot hold back his laughter.
This is a crew that was notorious already for being impossible to deal with on set, because Dorn and Stewart would go off and wrestle when they were supposed to be on scene, and they were just always causing problem. We didn't even learn about that until Picard season 3, because they're just like, you get this crew apart, they haven't done anything together in 30 years, and then all of a sudden they're on scene, and where's Dorn and Patrick Stewart wrestling?
And you could just see, this is my favorite screen grab from the episode. If you're watching along at home, I have a picture of, or
look
if you're
at Delancey. How could you not?
Delancey leading the mariachi band, his foot up on the railing, singing his trumpet to the sky. You can see Michael Dorn over here trying his best to keep it together. You can even see, I think, LeVar Burton over here like, oh my God. This is just, I love Star Trek. I love Star Trek. You got a Vietnam War allegory one episode. You got the Irish versus the British in another one, and then you have this. You know?
Before you leave this picture, hang on a second. So I noticed something in this series of episodes that I didn't notice in the last 10 or 12. We have two uniforms here. We still have the first 2 season uniforms on the crewman, on the ensign at ops, and we have the 3rd season uniforms on everybody else. And I've noticed, and I started paying attention to this, and a lot of like the extras have the older uniform.
Yeah.
And no matter what color,
right?
whatever, what division. But I mean, it's an easy, quick. If you're just walking through the screen, we're going to be on there for like 2 seconds. We're just rehash the old uniform. I thought that was a kind of neat thing, and it also plays into why does the Next Generation era have so many different uniforms?
Oh yeah,
and they're like different duty uniforms because we still have the scant, I think, around here.
We still have the scant, and fairly soon we start getting the coverall uniform
Yeah.
in the next couple of seasons. And then they go to the gray-shouldered uniform by the movie. But
yeah,
it's
which then became just the dominant TNG era uniform.
I kind of liked the coverall.
I would like to know who, like, the division of Starfleet that is in charge of uniform designs, and like how frequently are they tasked with coming up with a new design.
Well, with the original series and with Next Gen, I was convinced that the uniforms were consistent throughout the Federation, throughout Starfleet. But reading the IDW comics and looking at some of the other things that are going on, especially throughout Discovery's run, where different ships under different divisions seem to have different uniforms. Because the Discovery Science Fleet, they're very silver, and then you get Pike's ship shows up, and they're almost wearing the classic TOS uniforms.
But I think that the TOS uniform, I think they mentioned that because in Discovery, because they were like, oh, you've got these new uniforms, and Pike or Una make a comment about it, and the fact that there's still a couple of different versions of the new uniform that they're working through.
Yeah, it's wild.
Let's just kind of quickly talk about the next episode, A Matter of Perspective. The widow of respected scientist Dr. Nell Apgar accuses Riker of seducing her and killing her husband. Rather than turn Riker over for unfavorable trial, the Enterprise reconstructs the facts. Now, here I am, coming off a 3-episode high, right? And then this episode starts and I go, oh, am I about to be blessed with a courtroom episode? What have I done?
I thought you'd like this one because it's a courtroom episode.
No, it's a bad
What have I done
episode.
to deserve such prizes? And then the monkey paw's finger went down and I got a courtroom episode, but at what cost? It is, hey, did Riker assault a woman? Let's talk about it. Okay, see, episode opens, Picard's painting everybody, and my immediate reaction was, oh, how lovely, and then they show Picard's painting, and I went, oh, no, because Picard's painting is abstract, quite abstract, and Data comes in and immediately just starts criticizing it, and Picard is like, I am never going to paint again, and that's one of the pieces of trivia I had. Picard has never seen painting again. A deleted scene had Picard throw red paint at his painting after Data's crushing criticism of his work.
Well, that would have been a bit much for Picard, I think.
That'd be like a fit or a little fit.
Yeah, and I'm not used to Picard throwing a fit. Okay, so Riker and Geordi are on this planet. Geordi beams back, and then Riker's in the process of beaming back. But when Riker's in the process of beaming back, the space station explodes, and Riker is like, he gets back, and O'Brien is like, "Whoa, that was a close one." And Riker's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, the thing exploded right when you were beaming back, and it was a close call for everybody." So just Dr. Apgar was the only one aboard the station when it exploded. And so the Enterprise is visited by the planet's chief investigator, Craig Richard Nelson, who wants to arrest Commander William T. Riker for murder after he was overheard threatening Apgar.
Murder?
The accuser being his present widow, Manua Apgar. And so they conduct this investigation in the holodeck where they're like, okay, Riker, tell the computer everything. Tell it everything that happened, and we'll recreate it. And so we have a fun little courtroom instance where we're all in the holodeck, and they're recreating Riker's series of events as he remembers them. Mm-hmm. And this widow was hitting on him something fierce, and all of us at home are like, "No, Riker, get away from her."
Riker had his Me Too moment.
I didn't want to call it that, but Riker's got his Me Too moment.
Yeah.
And then they do the series of events from her perspective, and Riker is yucky and gross and ooh, so comes so close to assault, and I'm like, no, this, I can't have my courtroom episode like this. And then there's, honestly, I hate this episode so much. There's a series of backs and forths and
wow.
And you have a psychic on the damn ship, and the one time they even utilize her, she's like, "Well, I can tell you didn't do it, Will. You're innocent. I know you're innocent because I'm reading your mind right now, and you're innocent." But everybody else feels like they're right too.
Beta Z empathy is not admissible in a court of law, apparently.
It should be.
Sorry, half Beta Z empathy.
Anyway,
it's a bit of a stinker.
They solved the problem. I don't want to talk about this episode. I hate it so much. They solved the problem, and Riker gets away with it this time. Anyway,
can I say one thing about
I didn't hate
recreations?
This one. Yeah.
Look
at the recreations. So you look at Riker's, and Riker's is pretty much, this is what I did. Mm-hmm. That's great. And then you watch the wife's recreation, and it's like Riker, smarmy, like us. Lothario Riker, and you're just like, mm-hmm. And then you watch the assistant, who is nowhere near any of this, and it's also even worse Lothario Riker. But each time you go through it, the professor, gets more and more macho, just like, I'm going to take out Commander Riker with one punch. I'm like, that guy, mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah, that was the only part of the show this episode I liked is the recreation from the assistant where the professor one punches Riker out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I take that.
Yeah.
This episode is the source of the widely popular Riker facepalm meme. And this episode also has a similar plot to Akira Kurosawa's 1950 Japanese movie Rashomon.
But Rashomon's good.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, I'm sorry. I have to skip this. I don't want to talk about this episode because.
But that's good.
Should we talk about a good episode?
Because the next one tucked you in and gave you a little goodnight kiss.
And that's
on the forehead.
That's also partially why I wanted to skip it, because I wanted us to have plenty of time to talk about yesterday's Enterprise.
I was so worried because I had been building this episode up for a month now, and I was like, "Oh, she's gonna watch it and hate it." and then my carefully orchestrated Macha Hernandez joke isn't gonna work, and this is gonna be terrible.
Yesterday's Enterprise. The Enterprise C enters the Enterprise D's time and space continuum, where they find Picard and crew in a constant state of war with the Klingons, and only Guinan knows it. This episode, right out the gate, it immediately starts, and some episodes have an energy about them, and this one had that energy. It has the energy of this episode rules, okay?
It's like when SNL has a good guest and you just know.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, Josh Brolin last week... Did you watch Josh Brolin? His episode was very good. Anyway, so the episode starts. Guinan is talking to Worf, and Guinan, oh my god, because she's talking about how Worf should try getting laid once in a while, and he's like, "Well, I would need a Klingon lady, and because there's like no one else who can really handle me." And Guinan is like, "I don't know about that," and I'm like, "Girl, my god."
Come on, she hears all the gossip. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah.
She's all the gossip.
And anybody can open his calisthenics routine.
Mm?
Yeah. That's true.
And she's had how many? Over 20 husbands, right? Like she
knows a thing or two.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, the Enterprise is observing a celestial anomaly, something akin to a wormhole, when a starship appears, having traveled through it. To everyone's surprise, the ship is an earlier version of the Enterprise, and the Enterprise C, commanded by Captain Rachel Garrett. The instant the Enterprise C arrives, however, history is changed. And the way that they did this was so cool.
The transition and the lighting and the
they
way...
went in... Didn't they go in on... Because so Worf says something about the ship coming through, they zoom in on Picard, and then they zoom out, and Tasha Yar finishes the line. And like I said, I remember when this first aired, we always got together, we always talked, we're bullshitting nonstop, we're having the best time, and that scene hit... Not a word for another 45 minutes.
Everyone's jaw drops. Yeah.
Yep.
I had to rewind it because I was like, what just happened here? And Tony gives me a hard time because I complain a lot about I have multiverse fatigue. But I was like, this as the episode goes on, I'm like, this is not multiverse. This is something else.
This is what if.
This is what if. So Captain Picard, this new Captain Picard and his Enterprise, the Enterprise D, are battle weary with the Federation having been at war with the Klingon Empire for 20 years. Lieutenant Tasha Yar is alive, and Worf nowhere to be found.
Also, no ship's counselor.
And no ship's counselor. I did
you
notice
it's a
that.
battleship.
You don't need a therapist in a ship of war.
I mean, you should, but...
You should, yes.
The Enterprise C was supposed to have been destroyed 20 years ago near a Klingon outpost, and the C has massive casualties, but some life readings as well. Captain Garrett sends a distress signal on audio saying the C was attacked by Romulans and requires assistance, but the history on the D and it suggests that the C was never attacked by Romulans ever. So they beam the captain into sickbay as Klingons approach. Yar and Riker find helmsman Castillo, played by Shooter McGavin, Christopher McDonald, and he's alive as well. Riker reports 125 survivors as Geordi fixes the life support of the C. Rachel is surprised to know that her ship traveled 22 years into the future. They handle this so well, right? Yeah. Because Picard is like, we can't tell them. So like when they're over there on the sea, she's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, they're all like, "We're from a Federation starship. Don't worry about it. We're just from the Federation. You're in good hands." And this whole time, Picard's talking to Captain Garrett, and she's like, "I gotta. What is happening? You have to tell me." And Picard's
I don't recognize your tech. I don't recognize your uniform. I don't.
Yeah.
Like, you look Starfleet, but you don't look Starfleet. Like, what is happening? And so Picard, he says, "Okay, listen, it's a secret. You can't really tell anybody, but you have traveled 22 years into the future." And
things aren't going well. Yeah.
Don't know that you could stay here. And she's like, "Well, we don't want to go back because, if we go back to our time, we will die immediately." And he's like, "Yeah, but I don't
war."
But war,
and we're losing badly.
Yeah, we could use your ship for help, honestly.
For 2 seconds.
So she explains that they were responding to a distress call, but it was the Narendra 3 was already destroyed by four Romulan warbirds. Picard feels if Rachel had succeeded in saving the outpost that day, it would have averted 20 years of war with the Klingons. Guinan, in the meantime, walking around, has a feeling something is wrong, and the way that she explains it to Captain Picard is the Enterprise is at war. I don't feel like it should be at war, and there's no children on board. And Picard's
like, why would there be children on a war ship?
He's like, why would there be kids on board?
Well, and there's such subtle little things too. Like, you notice in 10 forward, everybody's armed. And the lighting is super dark. There's nothing festive about it. It is a canteen. That's all it's there for, is for people to get a drink in between shifts, but they're all wearing hip phasers. Everybody is armed.
Picard realizes that the Enterprise C must return to its own time and place if their timeline is to be restored. Picard knows that sending the C back through the same wormhole would mean a death sentence, as it won't survive the Romulans. Guinan is clear that this timeline should not be allowed to continue. 40 people have already died in a war that wasn't supposed... 40 billion, people have already died in a war that wasn't even supposed to happen. And I really love, Picard in this instance, because he is he's torn. He is so torn right? Because he's like, well, she could be right, she could be wrong too. And there is just truly no way to know.
One of my favorite things, it took, my 5,000th viewing of this episode to realize it. They did a brilliant thing it's not obvious. It's so subtle. It's all Riker. You watch Riker in this episode. He looks like he's ready to pull the whole ship away from Picard through the last
He's
half
Captain
of this episode.
Riker. I got that vibe from him immediately. He's Captain Riker here.
He is skeptical, and he's just like, no, this is not a good risk. He's like 100% full tactical Riker. And it is an interesting and very subtle difference because there's no smiling, there's no joking, there's no relaxed Riker. It's all like his best life is explorer life. Military Riker, he's an asshole. And
he's Full Metal Riker.
Yeah. And I think that's also, he may not have ever met Deanna because maybe they don't bring hippie beta Zeds into the Federation. So,
and he doesn't have that opportunity to explore the softer side of Riker,
Right. Yeah, it's
Come
it's
see
wild
the
to watch.
softer side of
Riker. Meanwhile, Tasha and Shooter McGavin befriend each other. They both work on the shields of the sea, but it has limited armaments. Picard's officers are mostly against sending the sea back to its time. Only Data argues that even dying in battle to protect their outpost would be seen by Klingons as an act of courage and would earn the gratitude of the race. Picard tells Rachel that if the war is going badly for the Picard tells Rachel that the war is going badly for the Federation. They're en route to lose.
We're like 6 months away from losing. So,
more than half of the starships have been lost to the Klingons already. One more ship today will not make a difference to the war, but 20 years ago, that one ship could stop the war before it starts. During all of this, Tasha kind of comes to the realization that she's not supposed to be here. And
it's the way Guinan's looking at her.
It's the way Guinan's looking at her. And Tasha even says that they've known each other a long time. And it's so brutal when Guinan says, I'm not supposed to know you at all. Like, rip my guts out.
They did something they don't do on scripted television, network television, anything. They admitted a mistake because Guinan says, you died a death without meaning. And literally saying a producer decided you're a shithead for asking for a better part and killed you off in the shittiest way possible. So here you go. Here, have a good redemption death.
Just gut-wrenching. So while this is happening, the Klingons attack and Captain Garrett, Rachel, dies on the sea. And the person who is the highest ranking is Shooter McGavin. And so he's like, I'm going to take the Enterprise C. I'm going to take it back. We're going into battle. And Tasha, having, built up this friendship and romantic relationship with him, knowing now that she in an alternate timeline is dead, goes to Picard and, quote, requests a transfer to go onto the sea to die for something meaningful. And Picard is like, yeah, go for it. And I'm just, again, at my computer sobbing because she beams aboard the sea and Shooter McGavin's like, you can't be here. And she's like, I'm here. Like,
I got a transfer. Here's my papers.
Here's
no
my
one
papers.
tells Mata Hernandez she can't beam aboard.
And I'm here to deal with it. And he's like, okay. And so, the things happened. The Enterprise C gets attacked by the warbirds, and then suddenly everything's back to normal on the Enterprise, and
nobody remembers.
And I just love the way that they don't even do like a doodle-doo transition. It is just like a smash cut to the way things were before.
It's not even that. It's the same shot of Picard, or the tracking shot they do with Picard going to Tasha in the first part. It's that same shot now with Worf, and you're like, well played. Well,
I
they can't cinematography.
had to rewind it. It was so cool, and I was like, did I miss something? No, it just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then Guinan, comes over the communicator. She's like, I just want to check in and make sure everything's okay. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And then the last scene of the episode, again, rip my guts out. Guinan and Geordi are in 10 forward. And this shot, it mirrors the first shot from the beginning of the episode, which is just so beautiful, where it's just these two at a table and the stars behind them, right? And Guinan is like, Geordi, tell me about Tasha Yar. Episode ends, I'm crying. Like, just what a phenomenal episode. Just absolutely insane.
It's considered one of the best of the entire franchise.
Yeah.
At the 50th anniversary, at the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas in August 2016, fans voted this the 5th best episode of the Star Trek franchise.
Oh, yes. Okay. It's my second favorite.
They talked about every version of this script that came together, and it literally came to Ronald Moore having all of these different disparate plots. The bringing back Tasha Yar, having this Yesterday's Enterprise bit, and a couple of other things, and him just mashing it together and saying, this is how it works. And it's kind of flawless.
What he said. Ronald D. Moore noted, we brought Denise Crosby back to kill off Tasha Yar a second time. It was a great opportunity to send the character off in a big heroic sacrifice because nobody was really happy with the way she left the series in the first season.
I'm straight.
Nobody on the show really liked it. The fans didn't like it. I'm not even sure she really liked it. So Yesterday's Enterprise was a chance to kill her right. Some other things to note. The ambient noise level aboard the ship was increased in the alternate timeline. Consoles and displays were made more audible. The warp engines made a dull roar sound. Intra-ship communication announcements increased. The doors made a swoosh sound reminiscent of the original series. And the set lighting was also significantly changed and darkened. I also noticed the bosun whistle was different and cool, right? Like, I kind of wish I had that as a ringtone. Have to track it down, but...
Well, there's a couple of neat things in this. It's like the first scene with Worf and Guinan, and she's kind of like, you need to get out more, you need to date people, etc. She introduces him to prune juice, which is the first time we see this, and it's a running thing. So you will see him with his prune juice, and everybody's like, "You sure you like that? Yeah, it's great." And it's just like, it's what he says.
I'm regular now.
What he says about it is, a warrior's drink.
Yeah. And another thing was the way that you mentioned, the way that Guinan looked at Tasha. And I kept watching this, and every time she realized that something was off, it took me back to the first time that she encountered Q on the ship, and the way that she looked at him with that rage and anger. And she looks at everyone just kind of like, this doesn't feel right, you shouldn't be here. But she looks at Tasha, and there's almost a look of like melancholy or pity, almost like, you are so wrong, everything about this is wrong, but you are the most wrong thing here, and I don't have the heart to tell you until Tasha goes to her and says, what happens to me? And she's just like, you died. And
you're an abomination.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just like, you can see her just like, I don't want to have this conversation at all.
This episode introduced my favorite ship.
Well, let's talk about spaceship porn for a second.
The Ambassador class.
The Ambassador class ship, the Enterprise C. When people ask me, what's your favorite Star Trek ship? I say, well, the Defiant, but the Enterprise C. They expect me to say A, or but it's the Enterprise C, because it just looks beautiful. It is a wonderful combination of like the next gen nacelle kind of style, and then that old classic Enterprise style. It's a wonderful, perfect combination. And I remember when I saw the ship, I went, there's the one. That's the one I should have went with. That's
my baby.
That is beautiful. I liked it so much that when Lee and I were writing our Star Trek treatment, we decided that it would be on this class of ship, and that would be part of the story would be that this is an old ship and it keeps breaking down, and that would factor in. But then we invoked the name Peter David earlier. Peter David then took that ship. He loved it so much as well. He says, I'm going to write a series of books, and it's going to be called Star Trek New Frontier, and I'm going to use that ship, but it's going to be the USS Excalibur, be the name of the ship. And he created a captain on his own, Mackenzie Calhoun. He then populated the crew with not only characters from the animated series, but also characters from books that he had written previously that were in his Starfleet Academy series. And then he also had a character there that we learned later was the child of the Greek god from the original series, and the woman that he, and he was like the best navigator in the fleet, and nobody could figure out why.
He's a god.
It's because he's part
he's a demigod.
He's part god. He can, he doesn't need the computer to find his way in the universe. But yeah, just a great series of books. I loved the New Frontier books. They were terrific. So if you're a real diehard Trek fan and you haven't read these, here's a recommendation. Go and get them.
I'm just glad he got to write the Trek books that he did, because his contract for those books was better than anything he had for Marvel. So
yes.
So I have to ask. I wasn't around much for season 1 Next Gen on the Spaceship Show. Did you guys talk about Macha Hernandez at all?
No, it doesn't sound familiar.
No,
okay.
Sorry.
So this is the joke, and I'll make it as quick as possible.
Okay.
I've been dying to get to this episode so I can talk about Macha Hernandez. When the character of Tasha Yar was originally pitched, she was supposed to be played by the lady who played Vasquez on Aliens. That's who they wanted. And they said, okay, well, we're gonna call her. Now, the guy who claims that he did this, he was a gay writer who was trying to slip gay characters into the story. This is what he claims. There are other people who said this is not the case. But the character's name was Macha Hernandez. Oh. And, of course, the actress was not available. She was available, then she wasn't available, then she was available, then she wasn't available. And they were getting ready. Finally, they get Denise Crosby, she was going to be Troy. She was going to be, they had all kinds of different characters that they were going to be playing. But they finally get to Macha Hernandez when somebody realizes that Macha, in some Latin dialects, is slang for a butch woman. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, oh, we can't call her Macha Hernandez. This is not something we can fly in the 80s, not in Reagan's America. And so they come up with Tasha Yar, and that works with Denise Crosby and her Eastern European ethnicity. But I still to this day wish that Macha Hernandez had.
I would have loved that. But here's the thing about the actress that played Vasquez and would have played Macha Hernandez, not Latino.
Jeanette Goldstein.
Yeah, Goldstein is her name.
Not quite.
Not quite. But
another thing I just want to quickly mention: the belts.
Yes.
Silver belts.
Just the belts.
Is that it?
Silver belts. Silver belts.
That one still kind of distracted me a little bit. I was like, okay, so you're in this dark, militant parallel timeline, and you've got shiny tactical belts. But that's
another thing too that we got to see Picard in battle mode, which I don't think we've really seen before.
These leaping consoles and
we also got to see Picard who's like, I'm telling you what's going to happen, and they're like, Riker's like, I don't think I like that idea. He's like, I'm not asking your opinion. This is what's going to happen. These are marching orders. This is not a democracy.
Yeah, we're not discussing this.
Whereas on peaceful Enterprise, Picard's like, I'm open to all opinions, and I will consider every single one of yours.
Yeah, it's like this is it.
Now back, I can't believe I'm going to say this. Back to the belts. I wonder if they're, I wonder if they're channeling the Evil Empire original series episodes, because you remember they had.
Think about that. Yeah.
They had belts as well, like that.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what they were channeling. I don't know.
So I'm excited for you, Rebecca, because you got to see Battle Mode Picard, and in the next series of episodes we watch, you're going to see Leisure and Recreation Picard.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where you actually find out that Patrick Stewart was, shall we say, a bit cut.
Yes.
Oh no! Oh no!
Oh no! Oh no, Rebecca.
So
it's got good legs.
The next episode, this is, I'm also dropping this bit of information on you guys. The next episode, we're going to talk about 6 episodes instead of 5.
Oh, okay.
Because then the episode following that is the finale. And I hear the finale is a bit of a doozy. So I wanted to make sure we had time to talk about that in the season 3 finale episode. So next episode, we're going to be talking about The Offspring, Sins of the Father, Allegiance, Captain's Holiday, Tin Man, and Hollow Pursuits. So a little bit more extra homework for next week's episode. But, is there anything else we want to wrap up about yesterday's Enterprise or this grip of episodes as a whole? Because, my God,
there's nothing that we can say.
Nothing you can say.
Yeah, just if you're listening to this episode and you realize you haven't seen yesterday's Enterprise in a long time, fire up your Paramount Plus and watch it again.
And you can tell the people that did the digital restoration on this episode loved it as well.
Yeah,
because they put their skills of an artist at work on this.
It's great. It's great Trek. It's great writing. It's some good acting. It's got it all, and that spaceship.
It's a beauty.
All right.
It's a beaut. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week, you guys. We'll keep going where no man has gone before, but a lot of people have gone before. Thank you, everyone.